Thank you for tuning in. 22 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. There was a story this morning that California passed a law that all new homes, I think in 2020, starting in 2020, will have to have solar panels on their house. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Very cool.
The only problem is it adds $10,000 to the cost of the house. Mm-hmm. So that might not be that bad.
Well, which isn't bad if you got a mortgage. You know, divide it up, it's fine.
And we have a community here over at On Top of the World. One of the sections over there, they're doing the same thing. So there's no law that says they have to, but that's just what they've chosen to do. So it's an interesting thing. We're not really talking about solar cells, by the way, but we're talking about buying a home. Michael Micheletti served as news director for Clear Channel Radio. He's a former reporter for Fox News and CNN, a real estate educator, and the director of corporate communications at Unison Home Ownership Investors. He's talking to us about a new survey for potential home buyers, asking this question: would potential homeowners be willing to give up the right to vote for a 10% down payment if they knew they weren't going to have to pay it back ever? A right to vote in like the general election?
I guess so.
All right, let's find out. Michael Micheletti, what is this about? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Yes. So what we wanted to do, and usually when we run these kind of surveys, they always tend to be a little bit on the number side. And what I really wanted to do was to look at exactly what, on a lifestyle component, what people would give up. And so we asked the question, would you give up the right to vote? And 22% of respondents said yes, they would give up the right to vote for a down payment that they didn't have to pay back. But we also asked questions like, would you give up vacationing for 5 years, or eating out for 5 years, or your driver's license? And ironically, out of all of those, the driver's license was the one thing that most people wanted to hold on to. Only 9% of folks said that they would give that up.
Oh, that's kind of a funny question, yeah. Go ahead,
But if you think about this, is that the people that we surveyed were folks that they're wanting to buy a home this year or next year. And when you think about the home dynamic, what does that mean? Is if you're moving further away from a population center, you're moving into the suburbs, you need to be mobile. And I initially thought, I was surprised, like, well, with Uber and Lyft, you can still get around, but that really doesn't work for a family dynamic, right? You need to get to football practice. You need to be able to go to work. You need to drop kids off at daycare. So the Uber Lyft option isn't a good option. So I could see why people really wanted to hold on to it, knowing that they wanted to buy a home this year or next year.
And so how do you use that information? It sounds like you were able to use that unique question to maybe get a more accurate understanding of what people are looking for, right?
Right. So, I mean, what we really wanted to do was say, you're willing to give something up. And we really know, on the whole, there's so many surveys. Everybody's done them about the home buying challenges and the down payment. We know that. Well documented. But what we really wanted to know was, A, where are you in the process of saving? How long do you think you need to save for to get to that down payment? And what we found back from this survey was that most people have a completely unrealistic view on how long it's going to take them to save for that down payment. 84% of folks say that it's going to take them 4 years or less. I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective on that.
Yeah.
The median home at the median salary in the United States, now depending on where you're at in the country, is anywhere between 5 and 20 years to just save for a 10% down payment. So those same folks said in 60, right? So 67% of these people have less than $7,000 saved, even though they are planning to buy a home this year or next year.
Wow.
So they are going to have significant challenges, A, qualifying for a loan, or finding properties that are going to fit that very low profile.
Wow.
So that's why we were looking at it in that way.
Okay, so that's interesting information. So how do those people find a home? I mean, if they end up having to continue to rent, then they're not throwing the money down the toilet, but you know what I mean. They're not able to put it toward a house.
Right, and so that's part of this process, is that we asked them right after that, what's the challenge? Why can't you save? If you're answering this question in such a way, and we found that student loan debt, credit card debt, car payments, and the cost of health care really were limiting the ability of a household to save. And this is not just saving for the down payment, but just their day-to-day savings account.
Right.
And so we're seeing this really proliferate across the country, that people are undersaved in their retirement, in their day-to-day savings and, frankly, on the down payment of a home, because you usually use a separate account for that if you're doing it in the right way. So for those folks, I think really what's important is that they need to know that there are other options for them in the marketplace today. This isn't sort of your mom and dad's way of buying a home. Go to the bank and you get some crazy, ridiculous mortgage that you can't afford. Is that we're seeing employers step in across the country and realize that we need our workers, our employees, to be close to our jobs. We can't have them driving 90 minutes or 2 hours to a job.
Right.
It's the quality of life issue, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing employers step up. The company I work for, we're bringing equity into the equation so there can be a mixture of debt and equity in the purchase of the home. There's a crowdfunding solution as well that's out there that's very, very, that really gets to the heart of the matter of getting that down payment beefed up enough that you're not borrowing more than 80%.
So if an employer is helping you out with the down payment, what is your end of the deal? You have to stay with that company for 10 years, or is there anything at all attached to it?
Well, it's a really good question. And what we've seen in the past is that a number of universities and hospitals have had programs like this for a long time. As you well know, you leave medical school, what are you saddled with? A ton of medical debt, right? There's student loan debt, right? At an extreme level. And so when you're trying to have doctors at universities or your local community hospitals, they needed to do something to help bridge that gap for them, because frankly, they couldn't even buy a house, much less rent a house, because you're not making enough money. Yeah. So these programs have been in play, but for select groups of people, right? But now where we're seeing first responders having access to these kind of programs, even the Facebooks and the Googles of the world are really taking a hard look at this and going, we can't have our folks travel 2 hours to and from work every day.
Right.
Let's get them closer. Let's get them the funds that they need so they can be closer to work and increase their quality of life.
Michael, we have less than a minute. I know that everybody who's interested wants to get to the bottom line. Is there a website or a phone number or a book or something?
Absolutely. No, so if you want to learn more about how Unison's bringing equity and a homeownership investment to the masses around the country, just go to unison.com. That's unison.com. Or if you want to check out the survey, there's some other interesting tidbits about relationships and other things that are in there. You can go to unison.com/radio.
Okay. Michael, good information. I know that our listening audience is probably going to really be interested in this one. Thank you for taking time to tell us about this.
Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The White House cheering the release by North Korea of 3 American detainees who arrived overnight at Joint Base Andrews. Next up, trying to clear the Korean peninsula of nuclear weapons.
We will see if we can do something that people did not think was going to happen for many, many years.
President Trump says he thinks that the North Korean leader wants to reach an agreement at their upcoming summit.
They're still working out some minor details, but what we can tell you, Singapore would certainly present a very unique backdrop. It's a unique geographical location, and certainly the president and all the leaders in the region would have reason to know that that would be the place that perhaps history could be made.
Fox's Kevin Cork. And the FCC says open internet rules will cease on June 11th. The revised rules, a win for internet service providers, but opposed by firms like